Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Buck Brief. This episode, Michael Malice back in the hot seat. And look, Michael is the host of You're Welcome, which is fantastic. He's an author. He's a super interesting guy. Don't tell him I said that. Michael, the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump just happened. What are your thoughts?
Second known assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I mean, we don't know how many. I'm sure there's many assassination attempts on all presidents that we're not privy to and we shouldn't be privy to, so people don't have workarounds. I was on Rogan not that long ago, and Rogan had asked me, do you think they're going to do it again? And I said yes, and he goes, yeah, me too, immediately. I think this is, I'm more concerned because I don't think this guy had a chance. It wasn't like he was close. I don't think President Trump was actually in danger, but I'm more concerned about the fact that there's no come to Jesus moment with the media about, okay, what's our part in this? Because we've heard for years about dangerous rhetoric, Gabby Giffords, all this other stuff. And then someone actually pulls the trigger, and it's just, I don't know if you saw this, Lester Holt was blaming Trump's rhetoric for this. I mean, did you see how he was dressed? I mean, he had it coming.
Not only the Lester Holt clip that I saw, he says that it's Trump Trump had another attempted assassination. Maybe this will change Trump's rhetoric about how it affects the Haitian migrants in Springfield. It was just mental gymnastics of the most dishonest kind on display. But I guess this is the media's got nothing else because they can't show us more Kamala. That much they know. They can't have Kamala actually out there campaigning like a normal presidential candidate.
But Buck, it's also, you can't have people viewing Trump as a human being. Because if there was just even this moment of, okay, this guy's terrible, his policies are bad. Like in 2008, Barack Obama was like, I think John McCain's a great man. I just think he's wrong on everything. If they can't even say that about Trump.
Yeah.
It has to be that he's this existential demon and at that point, it's like, well, if this person is this existential demon, isn't it appropriate to take whatever actions necessary? You can't simultaneously say someone is the biggest threat to America since the Civil War and then also claim that committing violence against them is somehow beyond the pale.
I mean, how do they get around that? I mean, that's people have really picked up on this. If someone is Hitler-like, violence against them is completely justified, right?
Or mandated.
Or mandated. So how can they say Trump is a Hitler-like figure, would bring fascism to America, would end democracy? And this is from the Kamala campaign. When you say someone's a threat to democracy, that is not a claim that is routinely made about other Republicans stretching back for a long time now. A lot of nasty things they'll say about them, but not they're going to end the country. If someone's going to end the country, what is not justifiable?
Yeah, and I don't know if you know this, but in 2020, both Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton were blaming the violence in the rioting on Trump's America, and this is at his fault and at his feet. So I'm concerned that they're not concerned, because if there was as much of a meltdown over what happened, in Butler, Pennsylvania, as there is on a daily basis about climate change, which even if it's true is going to take decades to screw things up, this is happening right now in the middle of an election year. I think one of the biggest threats to democracy is assassinating people. That's a pretty big threat to democracy when you don't get to vote for somebody because they were murdered.
And as we know, there have been assassinations that have led to the First World War, have led to horrendous, very broad consequences historically. If anyone who's
progressivism,
a basic student of history would see that this is the risk we run. I mean, I am curious. What do you think would have happened if, let's just say, I'm still very worried about Trump's safety right now. I continue to be worried about this going forward. You too, or?
Of course. Are you crazy? I mean, you were a spook, but I mean, I'm sorry. Look, I'm not a Secret Service operative. I'm not a gunsman like, many of your listeners are. And I mean this with great honor, but you and I, if we went to that field in Butler, we would have seen that roof. This is not some kind of weird, cryptic magic eye thing.
Well, this is my concern. I've been saying this today on the radio, Michael, is because of what we saw in Butler. Every lunatic who thinks that they're morally justified in going after Trump believes they could take him out. You know what I mean? Well, it's the mystique of the Secret Service is gone. No one thinks that these guys are like super warriors who are always on it. Really, they're just kind of bossy at like charity events and political fundraisers to people who pose no threat and then miss the obvious. I mean, that's been my experience with the Secret Service, and that's what we've all seen in terms of their ability to deflect threats. So yeah, I think Trump is under continued threat. And if they had taken him out in Butler, what do you think what happens? What would have happened to the country?
I don't want to think about it because there's a couple of scenarios. One is that the MAGA people regard this as having, truthfully or not, been a deep state operation, and poop really hits the fan.
Yeah.
Or even more likely, but scarier, is that the Biden administration uses this as an excuse to clamp down on freedoms and really, make the COVID experience look like kindergarten. Because now they can say, look, violence is out of control, guns are out of control, we're locking stuff down in a draconian way. And they would have a lot of support. And the media 24/7 would be saying, this is what we need to do. We can't let this happen again. They would make Trump a martyr for their cause.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's all very true, which is stunning when you actually think about it. We'll come back into this in a second. I want to ask you about the Kamala campaign. Is this sustainable in a way where they can push her across the finish line or not? There are a bunch of folks out there who are very close watchers of gold, and they've been saying for a long time, look at the price, look where it's going to go. Gold has hit an all-time high recently. The federal government's printing money, and that means that there's a debasing of the currency that goes on. This is just what is happening. It is very straightforward. But while the government's printing money, gold has only increased in value. Having a portion of your savings invested in gold is a good thing. You can rely on the Birch Gold Group. That's who we trust to handle your gold and silver purchases. Birch Gold makes it understandable and easier than ever to purchase physical gold that you can hold in your home. And likewise, it's just as easy to purchase gold and put it in your 401k or tax-sheltered IRA. More Americans than ever now own gold and or silver. For those that purchased those precious metals over the last year, they've done very well. Our friends at Birch Gold Group are ready to help. Text BUCK to 989898. Again, all you have to do to start owning gold or to have a gold 401k or IRA, text BUCK to 989898, Birch Gold Group. Kamala, to me, it's clear, even though people had very interesting opinions about the debate, the Kamala campaign is losing. Do you think they can turn that around, or is this a campaign in terminal decline?
But she's really like the mascot. I think people need to realize that. And I think on a subconscious level, people do. Just like Biden was the mascot of the Democrats in 2020, no one's voting for Biden, right? They were voting to stop Trump, and they're voting for the Democrats. They can easily drag her across the finish line. There's a few scenarios. It could be 2022, where people are expecting a Republican victory, and it kind of trickled across the finish line. It could be 2020, where they do drag the carcass, into the White House. Or it could be 2016. I expect, if I had to make a prediction, gun to head, that she's going to be overconfident because of how well that debate went for her, and she's going to have a few more interviews. And when this broad goes off script, that's when hilarity ensues. She's more of a gaffe machine than Biden was at his worst. So I think there's going to be a lot of that before now and November. But I do think if I had to bet money, I would give him about an 80% chance of winning right now.
I've always thought that Biden, because it was apparent that he was foggy and old, like really old, right? That even when he would say weird things, you go, he's an old guy. Yeah. With Kamala, you're just like, what is wrong with this person? She's not that old. You know what I mean?
You heard what I said on Rogan, right?
No.
So I you may have to bleep this out. I said going after her, you're both racist, sexist, and ableist. And he goes, ableist. They go, yeah, because she's literally retarded. And I'm glad to report that everyone understood what I meant by that word. Not one person thought I was making fun of someone who's mentally disabled, because there's something fundamentally wrong with her. She's either drunk all the time, like you and I, you or I or any podcast host we know, if we were given those questions by Dana Bash, would have been able to give a better Kamala answer than she did.
Yes.
We'd be able to put forth her positions better than she did.
Yes.
It's amateur hour from beginning to end. And the other thing is, by all reports, as you know, and as your viewers know, she's apparently a nightmare to work with. So
Yeah.
not only is she awful, she's not taking notes. Now that debate was to the contrary. Someone sat her down and said, "Here's what you're going to do," and she did it.
Yeah,
So
I
that was
think she memorized lines. I think honestly, everything,
right.
she all that happened was they're like, when they mention something about the economy, here's what you say. When they mention something, it doesn't matter what. And but people also, and I get a little bit of trouble with this. Even some of my own like inner circle friends, I could tell you have come after me on this. But I'm like, guys, they're like, well, they gave her the questions. I'm like, so what? First of all, we can't prove it, but second of all, we all know what the questions are basically going to be. Like there were no gotcha questions that were, who is the prime minister of I don't know, Botswana or Bangladesh or something. Like it just was pretty straightforward stuff. They did ask him about the Kamala, the race identity thing, but that was just them being moderators who were all in the tank for one side. It's not like if Trump had foreknowledge of that answer, it would have made some big difference anyway, or that question rather. So I think that gets too focused in on it. But yeah, Kamala did her homework, which is interesting because usually she's criticized for being someone who won't do the reading before she goes in. But I mean, I think she's a uniquely awful candidate, and to me, Trump has to win this because there's no way to spin losing to Kamala Harris. Like there's no COVID, there's no great existential excuse out there that you can reach for. It's the second time. He's got to win, and that's why I'm actually very confident Trump will win.
Well, there is a way to spin it, and that is they're going to say it was stolen, right?
Again?
So
do you think they would say it's stolen again the second time?
Do you have any doubt?
I don't
because
think
she's uniquely awful. Because Buck, she's uniquely awful.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can get. I don't know if that will. You're right that I think people will say that, no question. Yes. But is that going to be? Like most people that I know on the right think that there was cheating in the 2020 election and that Trump would have won without that cheating. Sure. I think that number may go from 60, 70%, maybe more of Republicans to like 20, 30%. You don't see it that way?
No, and I also, in a sense, I think it's irrelevant whether she gets in legitimately or not, because as someone who doesn't believe in democracy, there's no reason for you, if you lose your election, to take someone seriously. I mean, this woman's a fraud. She has no mandate to govern, even if she wins. Her views are fundamentally, un-American, in a sense that I think a vast majority of, like, these things about like sex change, her views are so nuts that journalists were fact-checking, putting forth reviews because they didn't bother doing the Googling because like, this is so crazy, she never believed it. And then they have to walk it back. I don't know if you saw it, the New York Times had to issue a correction because it turns out she did in fact advocate for federally funded sex change operations.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh God, you crazy Republicans are putting words in her mouth. It's like, no, these are her words from her mouth. Banning fracking, plastic. The thing that's also funny is when she had that interview with Dana from CNN, and she's like, used to be against fracking, banning fracking. Now, what's your position? She goes, I've made it clear. I've changed my opinion. Okay, why? Like, what change? Like, why? Like,
also, how? How has she made it clear, right? It's always through surrogates of the campaign who are anonymously reporting to friendly outlets. Like, well, that's no longer, as if that ends the, you know what I mean? That like ends the whole thing. Like, oh, well, someone in this campaign, it's crazy. But just a quick word from our sponsor here, Bear Creek Arsenal. It's time to gear up for the hunting season, my friends. Bear Creek Arsenal has you covered with a new firearm. What's awesome about the AR platform, for example, is its versatility. You can use your standard AR-15 for home defense. You can change your 5.56 upper to a 350 Legend, and then you're ready to hunt. AR-15s are super customizable, so you can set it up exactly how you like for exactly what you need. And now you don't have to pay thousands of dollars for a new firearm. Bear Creek Arsenal has tons of customizable, complete uppers for less than $300. High quality and highly accurate. I've got 3, going to be 4 soon, Bear Creek Arsenal firearms here at home, including 2 rifles. I love my Bear Creek stuff. Go check it out for yourself. Go to bearcreekarsenal.com. Use coupon code BUCK for 10% off. That's bearcreekarsenal.com. Use coupon code BUCK for 10% off your next order. Michael, when you come down to South Florida, we're going to take you out to the range, my friend. I got all kinds of fun stuff here. Yeah, I got suppressors, I got SBRs, I got all kinds of good things. We'll have a really good time. So let me know when you're when it's freezing in the rest of the, well, I guess how cold does it get in Austin in the winter? It's like cold.
It's 100 right now. Right, today's 100.
Right, but I'm saying in the winter time it gets kind of cold, but not that cold, right?
one day there's 40. There was one time that there was snow and basically all the electricity stopped working.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, they weren't really ready for that there. And I think one of my favorite senators unfortunately took a little trip to like the Bahamas or something, or Mexico.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
It looks to me that West Virginia is obviously going Republican in the Senate.
Yeah.
It seems like Tester's a goner. Do you think it's a given that the Republicans take the Senate?
I I think they'll have 51. I do. I think that the outcome of them not having 51 would require an astonishing own goal kind of situation. To be fair, though, they've had a couple of those in Georgia, which three Senate seats lost in Georgia, all of which absolutely should have been won.
And Alabama.
Oh, yeah, there's the Alabama thing, too. So, wait, who was it in Alabama?
It was that sheriff. Remember who they were, or whatever his name was, where they were saying he had all these weird things in the yearbook with
the yearbook stuff. Yeah. That was a while ago. Yeah, man. I think that the Senate is probably going to go our way. I'm a little worried. Eric Hovde is running against Tammy Baldwin. She's just one of these. She just knows the Democrat system so well. She's got like a Wisconsin accent, and she does the whole Wisconsin thing to people in Wisconsin. And she's all, "Oh, I'm a nice Wisconsin." And then she goes and just hangs out with hedge fund managers in New York, with her wife or her girlfriend or whatever, and like goes to fancy parties and does the exact bidding of Chuck Schumer and the Democrat establishment. And then goes back to Wisconsin and is like, "Oh no, I'm what?"
She beat Tommy Thompson, who had won like 8 statewide races. That's where she first got elected, if I'm not mistaken. That woman knows what she's doing. This
is what I'm saying. Yeah, she's the Democrat you don't want to run against because she knows the playbook. She's got the funding. And, Hovde is a wealthy guy and he's a smart guy, but it's just really tough because these Democrats, they know the game they're playing. They know how to win. So I'm worried about that Wisconsin seat. I think that it will probably get to 51. I feel very good about Trump's chances, mostly just because I've never felt this way before. I thought Trump was going to lose to Hillary in 2016, even though I voted for Trump. I supported Trump, but I was like, look, it's not going to, I believe I should never say this. I believe the New York Times. I thought she was going to win. And then in 2020, I thought Trump was going to win, but I had concerns. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't know. So I wasn't super surprised at the whole, but especially people forget this. There were articles that were saying things like, "Oh, whoever wins may not be winning on election night." That happened before. Those articles were coming out before the election, and I was reading them. I'm like, this mail-in ballot thing is probably going to really upset some folks. Cheating, not cheating, whatever. But this time around, I just honestly, and maybe this is like the worst attitude to take. I just can't imagine waking up and Kamala Harris has won. It's unfathomable to me. And maybe that's the worst approach to have, but I just can't think it's possible.
I'll just make 2 more points. I think if Trump does win, Ohio is going to swing Republican with the coattails. Sherrod Brown, he's a solid Democratic candidate, but Ohio is going hard red, in recent years, and I think people don't realize how much it's moved. I also think that if she gets in, this would be the first time, I think, in like our lifetimes where the incumbent president doesn't have the Senate. She would have 51 Republicans, so that would be really weird. And I think her agenda would be dead on day one. So that would be very interesting to see what would happen.
Yeah, we always think of it like whoever wins the I shouldn't say we always think of it, but there is a tendency to think whoever wins the presidency, it's like their agenda. And if Kamala wins and Republicans have the Senate, she's getting nothing done, basically. Right. There'll be a lot of executive orders, fights in the courts.
A lot of investigations. I think they're going to be out for blood. I think you're going to see a lot of the COVID stuff being investigated because Rand Paul and Mike Lee will be emboldened, and that's to their credit.
Oh, yeah. I'm still very angry. One of my great disappointments in humanity is how much people were duped during COVID. As you and I talked about this a lot during COVID, and how just upset I was at human nature that people were just we're like pack animals, like sheep. Not like wolves, like sheep. We're just as long as we're safe and fed and warm, nothing else seems to matter for a lot of people, for most people. And that there was no accountability for Democrats, and that even people on the right now, I get this on my show. I'll be like, I can't believe that they had vaccine passports for a vaccine that was effectively pointless. And you guys don't care anymore? People on the right, no, don't care. let's talk about, the next Trump agenda item or something. I'm like, all right.
You know what I'm more upset about, Buck, is that people, and I see this on Twitter, I bring it up, people that give me their answers and I retweet it. People who weren't allowed to have funerals. That to me is much worse. That you couldn't say good. If you care about, it's all about saving grandma. When grandma passes, you can't say goodbye to her. That to me is the unforgivable one. The passports I can wrap my head around more in terms of, okay, it's a nuisance, but this is
Well,
your one shot to say
funerals. Yes, but Michael, I mean, I know we're going back into COVID thing here. They didn't let people say goodbye to their loved ones who were dying in hospital of non-COVID stuff. So, grandma's battling cancer. She's at the end of the road. You want to give her one more hug? Not allowed.
Even if you put on a hazmat suit, give me a hazmat suit. Fine, I'll pay for it. I don't care.
It was monstrous stuff what they did. And yeah, I'm never letting it go, and I'm never forgetting it. And people can think that I'm crazy, but I think it was a window, unfortunately, into the future of the world. One more sponsor here, and then I'll let you close us out with some insightful thoughts, Mr. Malice. IFCJ. We're approaching the 1-year mark of the horrific events of October 7th in Israel. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews invites you to join them in Flags of Fellowship, an opportunity for Christians to remember the victims, honor the heroes, and pray for those still held hostage. Your support for the IFCJ, which goes directly to help those on the front lines in Israel, matters. Your generous donation today will not only provide a flag symbolizing your support in churchyards across America, but will also support the fellowship's ongoing emergency efforts in the Holy Land. Visit supportifcj.org to stand in solidarity with the Jewish people. That's one word, supportifcj.org. Oh, Malice, actually, I want to ask you this. This guy who took the shots, who wanted to take shots, he got shot at, but he didn't get to get a shot off at Trump. Seems like Ukraine is far and away the most important thing to this guy on the planet. What is that? Like, how are there Americans who think that the single most important thing in the world is supporting Ukraine in this moment? Like, take me into the mindset.
I'm from Ukraine. I was born there. I think there's a lot of this idea in the war machine that backs the media that at any moment America, when I talk about national divorce, a lot of these boomers come at me and say, if that happens, then China's going to invade tomorrow. I'm like, give me this scenario where China invades Texas. Like, what are the logistics here? What's the supply chain? It makes no sense. But there is this big sense for, I think, for a lot of people, and this guy was a little older, that they have this Cold War mentality, and that, if you have the domino theory, if Ukraine falls, then tomorrow Putin's in Berlin, and then he's in London, and the next day he's in Miami. It doesn't really make much sense. And I also, as someone from Ukraine, am very disheartened because it seems very clear that a lot of NATO and other allies have a gun to Zelensky's head and are telling him, you're not cutting a deal. Like, you have to keep fighting no matter how many of your people are slaughtered, and the pointlessness continues. And that to me is very disheartening.
What do you think then for that group? The end state is the total expulsion of all Russian forces from Ukrainian soil by military force of arms? Because it seems to me like that's a recipe for fighting for another, 10 years, 15 years, tens of thousands more dead on both sides at least.
But their logic would also be, well, you got to take Putin out, right? Because if you did it once, you got to teach him a lesson. So, is that really where how do you get there? Like, even if I agree with you that Putin's an evil guy and authoritarian and all this other stuff, what is your scenario for getting him out of power? I would love to hear it. Because we went through this with Saddam, which is, Iraq was nothing compared to Russia, let's be clear.
Yeah.
And that was a whole cluster for years, including for the Iraqi people. So what is your scenario here? So whenever people are like, we have to fight to the last minute, I'm like, what is your end goal? How do you see this ending? And they never have a good answer, at least an answer that I find cogent.
Yeah. And I'm just sort of curious. Do you think that Trump will be helpful in trying to get a deal done? I mean,
Yes.
do you have confidence that he will? Because that's one area where I couldn't explain to somebody better than I think he actually would sit down with Putin and be like, you're making a deal, and sit down with Zelensky and be like, you're making a deal, and no one's going to tell Trump not to do that.
Russians appreciate this kind of grabbing his pants, blowhard personality type far more than this kind of effete guy in his diaper in a wheelchair. Like,
Yeah.
I can tell you from my personal upbringing, that energy would be much more conducive, because then there's no loss of face on Putin's part. If Trump gets in his face and Putin's quote unquote backs down a little, it's not going to make Putin look bad. If he backs down to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, he's never going to live it down back home.
Michael Malice, everybody, check out You're Welcome. Fantastic show with Michael Malice. You may have seen him on his numerous appearances on the Joe Rogan podcast, by the way, which is almost as awesome as the Buck Sexton side podcast here. Almost as awesome. But great to have you, man, Michael. Appreciate you making the time.
Pleasure.
Good to see you.